right, welcome to episode number 6, the final episode of this journey that I've been sharing with you about a corporate approach to substance abuse and addiction with special reference to alcohol abuse. So my name is Jath and I'm looking forward to share with you my experiences and expertise to help and guide you towards understanding substance abuse related problems and how to deal with it. And we are focusing on the skills of empowering people to have a healthier workplace environment. And today we are focusing in particular on the prevention and the relapse prevention of substance abuse related problems. So let's have a look at the components of a recovery plan. And first of all, I would like to give you a recovery plan overview. And this is how it goes. So when a person goes for treatment, whether it's 2 weeks up to 2 years, there's a treatment phase. Then as the person gets discharged, they are entering the early recovery stage. And there's no specific time limit to this process of recovery. And during the early recovery, they have to settle in and get used to living a life of sobriety and abstinence. And then they enter the stage of mid-recovery, where they start to find their feet gradually. Eventually, here, around about after 2 years, they start entering the stage of late recovery, and then later on in life they can go into the maintenance phase where alcohol is now a total non-issue. It's not a big issue anymore. They are entering the maintenance phase. But we are focusing here on now the early recovery. When a person has been discharged, what needs to happen? We want to make sure that the person's chances of staying sober is strong. So therefore, that's what we're going to focus on today. So before a person needs to leave the treatment center, assessment and a diagnosis was made, and the doctors, psychiatrist, treatment plan, clinical psychologist, they did a comprehensive evaluation by all the healthcare professionals involved. And during this treatment period, they could identify all the different kinds of patterns that exist and all the issues that was addressed, and also to understand the person's medical, psychological, and social history was gathered to get a good understanding of the person's problems and their challenges that they have. Now, based on that, what we do in the treatment facility, we have to set goals alongside with the patient to establish clear, achievable short-term and long-term goals. It's not only what they're going to do immediately when they leave the clinic, but also going forward, the long-term action plan. And that's where we're going to have to collaborate with the patient to create a personalized treatment plan, one that suits them and that will work for them, one that they relate to. So during this process, before they get discharged, there was different therapeutic approaches that we used, like counseling, medication, and the support groups. We get 2 types of support groups that we have in the clinics, like open groups or closed groups in terms of the therapy. And where I work, we work with open groups, and aftercare groups like AA or Narcotics Anonymous, that's also open groups. Closed groups is private, it's very private, and it's only limited to a certain number of people and individuals that's allowed to be part of that group. So in our treatment facility, we make use of the open group setup. Now, here's the person leaving the facility after period of 2-3 weeks, depending how long the treatment was. Some treatment is only 2 to 3 weeks. Where I work, it's shorter. And if we work in a rehabilitation center, the treatment period can then be longer, like 6 weeks and sometimes up to a year or even longer. But when it comes to medical aids will only pay for 21 days per year. And that's where we find ourselves in. So we have to work very fast and make very sure that when the person leaves, that there's a very effective support system during the early recovery stage for them on the road towards recovery. And we focus on the wheel of life. This is one of the most powerful tools that I have encountered over the years when we look at a treatment plan, a recovery plan. There must be a recovery plan for all of these areas, like the role of the spouse, spiritual care. Spirituality plays a very important role. Health and fitness. Health and fitness is going to do with the medication, your sleep pattern, your eating pattern, your diet that you need to follow. Intellectual development, how they're going to stimulate their brain, their mind, to occupy themselves with meaningful activities. Work and career plans they need to have, and how to integrate into the workplace. A very important plan there with the EAP, counselor and practitioner, the roles that's going to be there clearly defined of how frequently they're going to see the person as soon as they have been discharged from the clinic. Also, the social life of the person, lifestyle changes in terms of friends, was addressed during the treatment period, where the person had to make certain decisions regarding who are the people that they would like to include in their support system. Also, what we do during treatment to help the patient to find self-care activities that will work for them. A plan of action must also be there in place regarding looking well of yourself. Also, hobbies, leisure and recreation activities needs to be identified. When will they practice it? What will be the cost involved? And what value will these activities play in their recovery plan? Then also the role of the family needs to be addressed. Sometimes it's also a broken family, or we refer to it as a dysfunctional family many times, where issues needs to be addressed within the family setup. The fact of the matter is they need the family support, and we need to make sure that the role of the family will be clarified. Also, home life, things at home must change, so the patient will have the opportunity in the clinic to make some plans regarding changes in the work environment. Then also parenting issues, maybe with children if there was a problem, that they have to address that as well in the recovery plan. And then finally also finances, that they have to address any financial challenges, that they have to have a financial plan in place. So you can see it's a comprehensive plan looking at all of these aspects. And now, keeping all of these aspects in mind, regular monitoring and adjustments is so crucial to make an ongoing assessment of the person's progress towards their recovery goals regarding all of these aspects that I've just shared with you. And there must be flexibility to modify the treatment plan based on the person's need and circumstances, because they make a plan and they draw up a very good comprehensive plan, but as soon as they leave the clinic or the rehabilitation center, things change and it needs to be adjusted. And the regular check-ins and follow-up with healthcare providers and support teams is necessary. And this is where Teams and Zoom sessions can also play a valuable role if we are not really available to see the person in face to face. But also in town where the person is based, that's also where they need to have their accountability partners ready there to support them. So here it is, this wheel of life. This is what your life is all about. These 12 aspects of your life regarding your recovery plan. And the EAP practitioner and also the line manager will just check with the person on all of these areas. How are you coping? What's your plan regarding each of these areas in your life? So let's have a look at the importance of a structured approach towards recovery. It's a scientific process that we follow, and we need to make sure that there's consistency and stability in the person's process of recovery. This means that we need to provide a predictable framework for the patient to follow. And that has got to do with this wheel of life, to make sure that the person have a good, thorough understanding of their recovery plan and that they are committed to it. It's a personalized, customized, committed program that they have developed. We just assisted them with that, but at the end of the day, it's their program, it's their design. And it's so necessary to reduce any uncertainty and anxiety associated with recovery, and especially when the person has been discharged, to address these typical issues and challenges regarding the early recovery stage after the treatment period. Accountability is so important to ensure that the patient remains committed to their recovery goals. The accountability partners like friends, it could be the line manager, supervisor, it could be the family members, it could be a pastor from the church, local church. Anyone, or at least more than one person, can be accountability partner. It could also involve healthcare professionals, online support to help and encourage them in their process towards recovery. A comprehensive support is necessary, in other words, to address all aspects of the patient's well-being, their physical well-being, their mental well-being, emotional well-being. Everything must be addressed during the support. Not only their physical, mental, emotional, but I also want to add here as well as their spiritual support and spiritual well-being, which is necessary. Then connecting with the community of support and resources in the community that needs to be available, and to have a whole network of support system available surrounding the person in their journey towards recovery. And these support systems, they will keep on looking at all of these aspects. Different people, different support will play a different role, like the doctor there, and a friend, and the employer, and friends. Everybody play a role here in surrounding the person in their journey towards recovery. So let me just also share with you the dynamics of relapsing. And this is a reality that the majority of people who did attend rehabilitation programs unfortunately do relapse. This is something that we need to be aware of. Therefore, being aware of it, we can intervene in time to prevent it from happening, at least then when it happens, to mitigate it. But more about mitigation later on. You need to be aware of the relapse warning signs. They start to appear one by one, and gradually, progressively, it starts to snowball until, as the person is going down this hill, gains momentum, and what happens eventually, there is simply no way to stop unless there is a relapse intervention by the support team members. However, the supporting members need to be aware of the relapse warning signs. Now, there are different factors that do play a role in contributing towards relapse. It could be stress and emotional triggers, and during the treatment period, they've been made acutely aware of all of these triggers, these emotional triggers. And they've also learned that when it happens and should the triggers occur, what will be the action plan to deal with these triggers. There could also be environmental and social influence that could play a role, especially if it's a toxic environment where the person returned to other people in the family members, friends, family. They are still abusing alcohol, and then it's just a matter of time, and in such cases often the people start to relapse. Then what makes it even more complicated, if there's co-occurring mental health disorders, certain disorders that the patient also struggle with, like bipolar, and when they go into a hypomanic or manic phase, they could easily start drinking. So those aspects also need to be monitored by the team, and the supporting team needs to be aware and trained and educated about these co-occurring mental health disorders that could play a massive role in their process of relapsing. So keep that in mind when a person starts to relapse, that we address the triggers, the social influences, as well as the mental health condition that these people may be suffering from. Let's have a look at the typical relapse warning signs that our patients have. And by being aware of it, then you can see it in time, and hopefully you will be able then to intervene and help the person effectively. First of all, there are typical behaviors that we need to be aware of, like, once again, there's a change in work performance. Just like the person's work performance declined before admission and treatment, now once again we see there's a decline, there's a slip, and that could be an indicator. However, we always need to look at the warning signs in correlation or in relation with each other, never to just look at one aspect in isolation and therefore just assuming the person is now in the process of relapsing. There's always a co-occurring a bunch or a whole lot of these warning signs that appear. There's also maybe an increase in the person's absenteeism that we pick up, and most probably by this time the person has already started to drink again or use their substance of choice, and they start to isolate themselves from their colleagues. Then we know something is not in order anymore when you look at these three signs as a manager. We are also very concerned about the emotional signs that starts to appear, like the increase of mood swings. We see that happens, irritability, anger, more anxiety, restlessness, become very defensive, and they start losing interest in all activities around them. Then we know something is not okay. Let's continue with the emotional and psychological aspects of relapsing. Well, we see the person starts to crave now, and they start having urges. There's an intense desire to use substances due to brain chemistry changes that starts to happen. And now, as these brain chemistry changes happens, like the dopamine level drops, serotonin level drops, now there's emotional and physical responses to their triggers, and they become more prone to these triggers. These cravings and urges is like a combination of physical and emotional, just an uncontrollable urge that they have for alcohol. And this craving often goes along with the feelings of overwhelmness and hopelessness, and especially with emotional dysregulation when they find difficulties to manage their emotions like stress, their anger, and there's just an increased sense of sadness appearing in their lives. And then the obvious thought in their mind is to turn to substances as their coping mechanism. This has become, over the years, their default settings. And now this is their shortcut towards coping. Another aspect of psychological relapse is when they start to deny and downplay the severity of substance abuse issues. They start to minimize the problem. And then we also see that they start to believe that relapse is a personal failure rather than a part of the recovery process. I want to stand still with this point, that when a person relapses, it's part of recovery. When a person slips, we help them to get up again. They learn from their mistakes. We review it, and we regard it as a process of recovery, and not to see it as a personal failure when a person starts to drink again. It's something that is part of the recovery process. And when we show the person the bigger picture like this, it will give the person some hope to get up and let's start working on your recovery process once again. Also, they start to isolate themselves from other people, their friends, their colleagues, and they start to withdraw increasingly more, and their social support they start to avoid. And what happens? Then they start feeling alone, disconnected once again, and that will then increase the risk of relapsing once again. They have now lost their sense of motivation. There's a decreased commitment to their recovery goals. Their life is now increasingly going more into turmoil and chaos. They start feeling hopeless and being overwhelmed by the recovery process. And when they start losing their motivation, we are seriously committed and concerned, very concerned about this sign of hopelessness. Now we need to intervene ASAP. The anxiety starts to increase, and as anxiety increases, it will soon also evolve into full depression. The co-occurring mental health conditions starts to make the substance abuse likelihood of relapse more stronger, especially if the person has a history of depression. Now the depression gets worse and the chances of relapsing increases. And as the person starts getting more anxiety, then the increased risk of relapsing happens. And that anxiety is many times disguised by anger, many times disguised by irritability. But underneath, it's actually anxiety that we need to identify and help the person to become aware of this emotion that they experience. The stress response becomes a problem. The inability to effectively cope with stress is also now on the increase. And the strong thought, it's like an overwhelming thought now, to use substances as a means to manage stress is now manifesting. Also, they will have impaired judgment and decision making. They start making impulsive decisions, and their reduced ability to make healthy choices due to these brain changes, as I've mentioned, becomes a serious problem. That's why they need to be on medication many times, like on antidepressant medication, sleeping medication, and anxiety, mood stabilizer medication to help them and that they stay on the medication. Otherwise, it will increase the risk of relapsing. This impulsivity that I've mentioned can lead to substance abuse despite the negative consequences that they are aware of. But the craving is so overwhelming that it's stronger than to think about the consequences of their relapse. Then let's have a look at the role of management in relapse prevention. In the work environment, we need to create a supportive environment. And as I said in my first episode, we need to change the corporate environment, the culture in companies, to make sure that we don't judge the people who struggle with this condition, that we are there to support them all the way, and to not see it in a punitive way, that we are there to help them in their process of recovery. So open communication channels need to be established, and I think it's important that your company, your office, your floor, wherever you are in the workshop, you need to make sure in your office that the communication is open, and maybe it's good to also evaluate the sense of open communication that exists there. Not only in terms of alcohol, substance abuse, but other issues as well. Now, when a person starts to relapse, then we need to intervene. Now, we can't just leave the person, we need to take action. So early detection is necessary and proactive measures need to be in place. We're going to take immediate action when it happens. And calling the person in to assure them of the access to professional help that is indeed available for them. And we're going to have to review the individualized support plan with them, make adjustments, asking how can we assist you? I see you're struggling, you're not coping, and let's just compare with what you've learned in treatment in terms of why you're not coping, why are you struggling to implement what you've learned during the treatment plan. And then we review once again the areas of the person's life where they struggle the most, which areas perhaps they struggle the most. Maybe they have issues with their spouse, maybe they have financial issues, maybe there's issues with their children, domestic problems, work-related issues. We have to identify these issues, these contributing factors now playing a role during the process of relapsing, that we have to close the gaps in these areas where the person is now suffering. Let's look at the corporate strategies for prevention. I think we need to understand that we need to develop a supportive workplace culture. And I don't think we are there yet, if I just generalize. We need to do more to promote work-life balance. I don't think companies in South Africa is doing enough. There's enormous pressure on people to perform, while others are being laid off, they are being dismissed. Others, the rest, have to work harder and harder. We're just human beings. And when this person is under pressure, there's one point where they can't cope anymore. At the weakest spot, if it's alcohol, when they start breaking down under pressure, they will then also relapse. So we also need to keep that in mind from a company's point of view. What can we do to help the person to maintain a work-life balance? I was once working at a company with contractors. They have to work ridiculous hours, and when they would complain, they say, well, you're easily replaceable. The next people there at the gate is waiting desperately for your job. So you've got a choice. That kind of attitude that we often see when it comes to, especially to contract workers, is very concerning. And companies really need to do more about helping their employees to create a balanced lifestyle between work and their life, their personal life, and to help them to make healthy lifestyle choices. If you talk about 24 hours, well, 8 hours you sleep and 8 hours at least you work, and the rest of the 8 hours traveling to and from work and family time, me time, hobbies, relaxation. So a lot of time we spend at work. Therefore, I believe companies can play a significant role in helping their employees to maintain a healthy work-life balance. Besides, at the end of the day, the company will score and benefit if they see it's a happily committed, loyal employee, healthy employee, therefore being more productive. It's also necessary to make sure that your company has got good policies and procedures in place, and in particular, a very clear substance abuse policy in place, and to review it to make sure that it's friendly, it's helpful, it's kind, it's supportive, it's there to help the employee. Yes, there will be consequences if the person keeps on relapsing. We've seen cases where a person eventually is medically unfit to work anymore due to the chronic abuse of alcohol. Yes, there are consequences. We know it. But in order to prevent that, let's have good policies in place to help people, to support them wherever possible, but even to evaluate the effectiveness of the company's substance abuse program from a human resource point of view, and to make the necessary recommendation to improve it. And also regular training and awareness programs is so necessary, where the EAP play a massive role in helping the company and helping the employees of the company to have a good mental state, to be actively, mindfully present when they do their work, and not to be hampered by alcohol abuse. So we need to keep on having all sorts of training about alcohol, and also the culture, the corporate culture that we need to challenge during these training sessions. And I think we still have a long way to go as far as that is concerned in South Africa. What about mitigating strategies that we need to have? Mitigating strategies has got to do with training and educational programs that we need to have in place. Regular workshops on substance abuse is necessary. We need to have awareness days. We need to have informative sessions on coping mechanisms, and it needs to be a continuous, sustainable process on and effort that we need to put in to help to change the whole mindset regarding the culture of alcohol abuse amongst employees. So that's the training and the educational programs that we still have lots of work to do going forward. Also, the role of the EAP plays a massive role in confidential counseling services that is available, and to make the employee aware of all the referral programs for specialized treatments that's available, and the resources available countrywide for substance abuse problems, to have agreement with the rehabilitation centers and psychiatric hospitals in terms of referring the people to these places. And that's where the role of the EAP play a massive role in that process going forward. Now, what about the employees' responsibilities? Of course, we need to encourage their personal responsibility. They need to motivate themselves as well. They've got the responsibility to monitor their own recovery program, to be committed to the recovery program, to turn up for support sessions and to be there on time. They need to stay mindfully aware of their potential triggers and having the finger on the pulse and seek help when needed. So that's where the employee plays a role as well in their own recovery. At the end, they are responsible for their own recovery. It's up to them. We can support them as much as we can, but if they keep on relapsing and they don't reach out or appreciate the hand of it that's been extended to them, then it's also a huge challenge. So that's the employee's responsibility in their process of recovery. Then there must be reporting mechanisms available, built into your system, an anonymous reporting system, for instance, to ensure confidentiality and support when a person turns up by saying they have a substance abuse problem and that they won't be discriminated against or targeted or being humiliated. So let me just conclude. There's a few things that I've highlighted today that we need to keep in mind in relapse prevention and relapse intervention. I've stressed the importance of a comprehensive recovery plan that needs to be updated if necessary. It needs to be monitored the whole time to look at this recovery plan. How effective is it, and what is it that we need to adjust as time goes on? Secondly, what I highlighted today was the dynamics and the warning signs of relapsing. Relapsing is a process, just as recovery is a process. Relapsing is not the moment when the person starts to abuse the substance of their choice. It's the consequence of relapsing, the drinking or the consumption of the substance. I've made you aware of the warning signs. So just as recovery, I repeat, is a process, relapsing is also a gradual process that gains momentum over time if not being addressed. We can see that within 2 weeks after a person start to relapse, they will drink again. So the relapsing process can be sometimes very short. And when it comes to other substances, hardcore drugs, it can happen 10 times faster. But with alcohol, we've seen that the relapse process is a bit slower, but gradually as it gains momentum. You need to be aware of the typical warning signs of relapsing. Thirdly, the company needs to have effective strategies for prevention in place. Having that in place, then we can help our employees far more effectively. And fourthly, the importance of ongoing vigilance and support cannot be underestimated. We need to be there for them. The aftercare is critically important in this process of recovery. To therefore support. Without support, it's not going to happen. They're not going to be able to really recover without the necessary support around them. Then, what I want to say today in conclusion, What I've shared with you so far, I've got 3 books that I have written. It's workbooks. It's all about recovery. And the first one is my personal development workbook. This is a treatment plan, my treatment plan workbook that a person uses, and these books can use it for years and years. Inside there are QR codes, and a person can use it individually or they can use it with a counselor. This is also a good workbook for a counselor. Also very popular is the wellness journal that patients can use in their journey of recovery. They record then their journey of recovery. And this journal can last for up to a year before you say, let me get myself another journal. And then lastly, I've also developed a fantastic workbook, Developing New Habits and Managing My Triggers workbook. And all of these workbooks people write in pencil, and because they would like to update from time to time their answers. So that's what I have created over the years. And this is also a tool that I use during treatment, but also for aftercare. I prefer not to use these tools on an outpatient basis. It's a bit too overwhelming for people. This is more for recovery. This is extensive recovery tools that I've invented, and I use it in the treatment facility. And when a person leaves the treatment facility, then they can use these books as part of their recovery program. Especially if I have to work online with people, then it's wonderful when the person do their homework, their recovery work, and face-to-face or online, they come back to me, they give me a report back and feedback about their recovery and any challenges that they are facing. These workbooks also play a role in their awareness that they need to develop. So it's available if anyone wants to contact me, WhatsApp me, email me, go to my website. There you can order it. So you're more than welcome to order it if you feel you would like to have these resources available. And may you be empowered to make a significant change in the lives of other people, and all of the best with your journey as well.